This episode of Speakers of Eidolon is made possible by our generous patrons. Special thanks to our supreme and master speakers, Circa Barrakiel, Remia Salia, Omiji Cat Comet, Erisu Yamakawa, Arcadia Lunashine, Dramavian, Alex Franco AV, Nina Grimstaughter, Casey Schaefer, Dimos, Lily Black, Hans Grenade, Sapa Chaquatol, Faris Gentoru, Cletus Oreo, Quick Levin, Luke Leonatrell, Cires, Icy Lee, Lyria Rain, Pamela Isley, Umbral Wind, Naive Arano, Celeste Rascris, Elendriel Maximus, Edwin, Bob CC, Fabs and Voidworm, Rami Maverick, Code Red No, Mira Miri, Winebow Brood, Bay Barbalay, Kaiser Regina, Usura Akari, AJ Brainswordson, Suno Shikano, Gideon Ura, Buster Gearhold, Asuta Starbreeze, Nat Clay, Camille Grino, Huskies, and Face on Masher. Support the show and become a patron today at patreon.com/SpeakersXIV. Thank you.
This is Speakers of Eidolon.
Good evening, Eorsians. Welcome to Speakers of Eidolon, episode 234. I'm Lakeel Bravestone, and I'm joined today by Georgi Whiston and Rollo Des.
Hello.
Hey! Welcome. It is February 20th, 2021. I don't know why I added the year, but there you are. A lot of stuff has been going down this week. A lot of interviews have been coming in. We were supposed to read 2 interviews last week, but we didn't read those 2 interviews, and now we have many interviews we need to get through today. We're going to eat up a little bit of the post-show because of that, but we will be reading questions from the Syndicate as well. So stay tuned for that. We'll also read, we'll read the interviews, and then we'll talk about the patch 5.45 hotfixes, because it's important, and then we'll read MogMail as well at the end. Let's, we started a little late today because we had to catch the first part of the MGP final, which is the national selections for Eurovision in Norway. Right, let's jump into channel updates. Very important update. My computer has been struggling for a long time, but it really hit its peak this week with a lot of blue screens. Getting a blue screen on your computer is like one of the scariest things in my opinion, because there's usually a very unhelpful like error code. Like for me, it said critical process died, and I'm like, all right, what do I do with that? Google that, and they're like, oh, it can be any of these things, and it's just all of these generic memory error, a processor error. Power, I thought at first, I was so convinced that my power supply was dying at the end. But it was none of that. Because, so I had already started to like, figuring out like, oh god, I need to buy a new CPU and a new motherboard, and I need a new power supply. Like, everything has died at once in my computer. But then there was there was one thing with the blue screen that I hooked onto, and that was the fact that Windows was unable to write a dump file. Like the blue screen came up and it just got stuck on 0%, you know, when it's like we're gathering information or whatever, stuck at 0. I'm like, there has to be something, because usually that should be fine. So I thought, okay, maybe it's a hard drive problem, and then it hit me. 3 years ago, when I bought an SSD for the C drive, it was like part of, when you have a computer you've built, you usually just keep upgrading things.
Yeah.
This 3 years ago was when I updated the C drive to an SSD. So during installation, I dropped the hard drive. I dropped the SSD, and it hit the floor, and part of the connector broke. So like the plastic that's supposed to like secure the cable, it clips on. So I thought, okay, well, fuck, that's that drive, I guess. Just as a temporary measure until I buy a new one, which I will do as soon as possible. Like I'll power on this computer and order that hard drive immediately. Yes, sir. I just put some tape around it, taped it in place, and put it like in the back of the case. 3 years later, the tape finally gave way. So,
you know what? You got 3 years of value worth out of a broken SSD. So you got,
true. That's true. So it has like slowly slid out. So that's why my computer has just become slower and slower because it keeps like losing contact. So it explains so much. So a new drive is coming on Monday. I had to clone the C drive over to like an M2 drive that I have installed, so it's all good now. But yeah, it's such a relief when you figure out what the blue screen is about. So no more blue screen. Well, there's definitely going to be more blue screens down the road because other parts will fail soon, anyways. But there we go. So everything's back on schedule. Well, everything's off. Everything has slid out of the schedule. I'm resetting the schedule now. We're just 1 month behind. Cerulean Reactor just finished rendering before we went live. It'll be out for patrons tomorrow on, remember, Early Access Discord channel. And it'll be out next week for everyone else. Also on Tuesday, that's 1.0 stream. We're doing a more thorough look at Lenosha. Lower Lenosha? I haven't actually decided which part we're starting with. Makes sense to start with lower. Movie night is on Thursday. And there will be you can submit your suggestions, let's say tomorrow as well. I'll just do all in one go. Cerulean Reactor and movie night thing tomorrow. All right. I don't know if we should not spend too long on this part, but this week in 14, Georgi.
Been doing some Blue Mage. I've got a lot of skills. I finally got around to capping my Blue Mage on my Crystal Goblin character. Almost there.
Okay, nice.
I'm ready to talk about the Blue Mage update when you have done it.
Yeah, which I haven't touched since we last streamed Blue Mage. So I need to catch up. Rollo?
I've been taking my friends through Bosnia. I helped to grind them out from 1 to 10. Took them to the Castrum after the update, so it made it doable. We had I think we had a full party in there on like a weekday afternoon, something like that, or a weekday evening. So I didn't expect it to fill up, but it did. So that was nice.
Nice.
And then we also did the raid, whatever it's called. I can't forget.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was nice. I like catching my friends up. But that's pretty much it.
Okay. I haven't done anything special other than what you've seen on stream. I don't think there's anything to. Yeah, it's just roulettes. Yeah, that's it.
Still working on that White Mage relic.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm working on that White Mage relic. Very slowly. All right, that's that. Enough of that bullshit. It's time to jump into recent events. All right, so Final Fantasy XIV has been updated. The hotfix is here, and it's good. It's a good hotfix. Castrum has been buffed quite a bit. I'll just read the hotfix list and then we can discuss it afterwards. The following adjustments have been made to save the Queen Blades of Gunhildr. The drop rate for loathsome memories of the dying has been increased for critical engagements in the Bosnian southern front. Maybe we should discuss each bullet point as we go, maybe. Maybe that's better. Or should I read all... You know what? Let's read all of it. It's fine. The drop rates for haunting memories of the dying and vexatious memories of the dying have been increased for fates in applicable areas. The number of loathsome memories of the dying obtained upon completion of the critical engagement, the Battle of Castrum Lacus Litore in the Bosnian southern front, has been increased from 1 to 5. The maximum number of Bosnian coins that can be obtained from personal spoils in the critical engagement, the Battle of Castrum Lacus Litore in the Bosnian southern front, has been increased from 26 to 100. Completion of the critical engagement, the Battle of Castrum Lacus Litore in the Bosnian southern front, will now reward metal and elegant tomestones of revelation or experience points, which... experience points for characters. 80 outside of the instance will receive elegant tomestones of revelation, and while characters below level 80 will receive experience points. Okay, so that's the first part. So, well, that's the most important part. Right.
People want to do it now, and people are. Seems like they are doing it. From what I've been in there,
Many people are doing it.
Yes.
You will see more than 48 people trying to get in now, which is great.
Yes.
Because just before this hotfix hit, you would see less than 5 a lot of the time.
Yes.
So sad.
Just the metal alone. Like, that's all I really wanted in the update.
A decent chunk of metal, too.
It's not, lot.
Yeah. To sneeze at.
No.
At rank 12, I got like 50,000 metal. I imagine it's higher the higher the rank you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
definitely do it when it pops if you want some metal.
Yes.
Or I guess
if you can get in.
I think you can get like 25 tomes too. That's how much.
Yeah.
Those.
You also get 5 loathsome memories of the dying for doing this once.
So I'm not sure if this is true. I have heard that is not guaranteed. It is a chance in the same way the opportunity to get loathsome memories are a chance from every other critical engagement in Bosnia.
Really? Oh, okay. Interesting.
It's 5 guaranteed. Okay, so maybe people were just confused.
No, it's always 5? Okay, yeah, because I was going to say, both times we've been in there, I gotten 5. And I'm usually not that lucky. Yeah, this was what Castrum needed. This is what Bosnia needed.
You can get the armor now, the upgrades for it really quickly too.
Much more easily. Yeah.
10 runs and you got it. And it's like, oh.
From 26 to 100. 100 coins.
I don't know what they were expecting for you to grind that shit out.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot to ask.
Yeah.
I am expecting Delubra and Regine to get a buff like this much later, because I think what will keep people doing Delubra and Regine is the fact that you need to do it 15 times for the final step of the relic.
Yeah, that's true. Oh god, that's true. Yes,
you can just go up for it. It's not like waiting around for the Castrum.
That's true. That's true.
I think that's the most frustrating part is that like you don't really know when it's going to happen.
No. So yeah, that's good. Good job. It feels like they've just listened to what people wanted and did it. There are additional updates, but I don't know if there's any that we.
I don't know if these are that
About.
important.
No. Okay.
I think
so there you go.
One slightly funny thing is that you couldn't freeze enemies in the Temple of the Fist. So they have changed that with. Ooh.
I am, therefore, I think the other way around. Yes.
So right now with the Blue Mage, most of the time when you're dealing with mobs, you will just freeze them with Ram's voice and then use Ultra Vibration. In Temple of the Fist, every mob was immune to freeze. That was apparently a mistake.
Oh.
It was not supposed to be like that, and they have since changed it. So
interesting. Okay.
How are you grinding the fist anyway? Is something you need in there?
Yes.
Oh, there's skill? There's skill in there.
The final boss has a skill.
Right. Okay.
So up until this point, quite a struggle to get it. or at least a little bit more difficult than every other dungeon.
Yeah.
All right. This first interview is from Impulse Gamer. It's headline Naoki Yoshida interview Final Fantasy XIV's lore and story, and we love a little bit of that. So let's jump in. With the new expansion Endwalker coming out later this year, which concludes an almost 10-year saga, we take some time to ask Final Fantasy XIV director and producer Naoki Yoshida some questions related to the lore and story of the widely popular MMO. All right, so it's a Q&A. It's like a questions and answers type interview. So first question. The Final Fantasy series has been known to have many races and slash cultures, with new ones being introduced with each title. What process does the team go through when creating new races and introducing ones from previous games into Final Fantasy XIV? Yoshida says, when we use the term race in Final Fantasy XIV, in reality, there are broadly two meanings behind this. The first is the race that the player him/herself can select to form the basis of their customized avatar, and the others refer to the NPC races that appear within the game. In the case of the former, it is no easy feat to add new races, and if we are to do so, we need to prepare it so that the several thousands of items available as gear can be properly equipped, and this is on top of developing the unique motions for emotes, standing by, walking, running, and the attack stances. This doesn't only entail a huge development cost for implementation, but also requires us to continually support those races in future update. I can hear the distant screams of the Vieira and Rothgar.
The seething in the background.
As a result, when considering the addition of new playable races, we have to factor in in how the workload will multiply. As such, this only happens on an extremely limited basis, and the deliberations about implementing or not would start only after I place a request and the costs are calculated. We're already approaching the limits in terms of maintaining a healthy balance between the operational costs and the quality of the gameplay experience, and so it could be said that adding any more playable races would be quite a challenge. Of course, I do understand the benefits of expanding the options available to players and their scope for roleplay. ... On the other hand, the addition of NPC races is, compared to playable races, a somewhat enjoyable process for the development team. They
don't get yelled at when they implement NPC races.
This is thanks to factors such as the character's gear being fixed and the developers benefiting from a degree of control over the emotes. But again, it's only enjoyable in comparison. Typically, we'll brainstorm for ideas alongside our efforts in formulating the story when working on a new expansion, by considering questions such as which regions will we focus on and what unknown cultures await therein. Since I also participate, the scenario team and I will consolidate the basic ideas and consult the graphics team after that. As for the final steps, such as the design and emote motions, etc., in the case of races that have appeared in the Final Fantasy series before, we'll thoroughly do our research before deciding on the race's physique and preparing several samples of their movement, all the while considering their standing in the lore. From there on, we enter the stage of incorporating all the fine details. As one example, when we were implementing the Vieira from Final Fantasy XII, we checked their prerequisites in advance and also had their creator, Mr. Yasumi Matsuno, kindly provide his support in this regard. After deciding on the physique and lifestyle of this race, we then determined their movements. Simply put, the process started from formulating the basic identity of the Vieira as an athletic race of hunters.
Why do they keep adding items they can't wear, though?
Yeah. It's interesting that he said the things he did. Because
I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
But...
I mean, I get it for the old items. I don't quite understand why they can't factor into the development process the ability for Hrothgar and Vieira to wear every new hat that they add into the game.
No.
That's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. It's weird that we've talked about this before. It's just odd. especially considering what he said in this interview as well. It's like, yeah, we have to continually update them as well. No, that's not what you're doing.
Got anything. I mean, I guess the models, like the armor and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's just odd to like ignore the headpiece, but all right.
Here's a question: have the Matanga existed in a Final Fantasy game before 14, or are they an original race to our game?
Let's look them up.
Let's look them up. Matanga Final Fantasy. Doing it live. It is only showing up in Final Fantasy 14.
Interesting. I like it when we get original races.
Yeah. I like that. That's, I mean...
Well, actually, there's the Alpha Dunk from FF7.
There's the what?
I don't know.
Oh, you... I thought... I thought... Okay.
No, I mean, there's an enemy called an Alpha Dunk in FF7.
Oh...
It's just a big blue elephant.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. And the Zhupuff from Final Fantasy X. I like bringing that up at random, and no one seems to like remember it. Do you want to ride the Zhupuff?
Like saying it, but I need to look it up.
It's just like a weird, like elephant-looking creature. All right.
Oh, what the fuck is that?
It's
a blue guy next to him too.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. History is crucial in every Final Fantasy game, and Final Fantasy XIV is no different. In every new expansion, new history is written. Whether it be a characters, a cities, or even an entire worlds, how does the team incorporate newly introduced ones into the story without damaging what has already been established? Retconning? Okay, Yoshida says, while it is a project that places great importance on long-term planning, in Final Fantasy XIV we also very much value meticulous improvisations. As a result, when it comes to the history that will be laid out in the main scenario, we endeavor to plan that at least... Sorry, all reading. We endeavor to plan that at least 2 years in advance. When doing so, we'll intentionally brush over any aspects that might hinder the plot or leave them undecided. This allows us to avoid any impediments to the story development. Okay. On the other hand, previously established histories and stories have been built based on a common understanding, and as such, at least for Final Fantasy XIV's story from A Realm Reborn onward, they don't serve as a hindrance for writing something new. If anything, we're able to write the new story with those established stories in mind as the premise. We make an effort to check the situation around global affairs, the work-life balance of players, and latest trends when we're working on implementing the new story, and it is when we tweak a few things to reflect those conditions that the improvisation I mentioned earlier takes center stage. Having said that, it's not like our improvising has any drastic impact on the story. Even if there is, it's limited only to the essence of the tale. I believe players could see firsthand how we incorporated a new story into a pre-established history and tale with Shadowbringers. It's very much because of the rich history that a story becomes more interesting. It's the same as life, really.
Sometimes they really do just say fuck it though, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Like, you know what, play as an aura through a Realm Reborn and have you right there in drabs.
Yeah.
It don't fucking matter.
Ignore the fact that Igiri is hiding her face.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense what he's saying.
You shouldn't be beholden to that kind of stuff all the time. I think it'd be for a very restricted and boring experience.
For me, it's more like they don't do that much. They don't retcon much in 14. There have been a couple.
No.
But...
Well, they especially don't retcon things from A Realm Reborn onwards. I like that he specifies those aren't a hindrance.
Yeah.
But things from 1.0, it's okay if we ignore that sometimes.
Yeah. But
it's fine. It's a vague memory at best.
I will say that we know that Yoshi-P doesn't like 1.0. Like, it's a done chapter for him. He wants it gone. Despite that, he's respected quite a lot of 1.0's lore. Like, even the arc that we've been on for 10 years is still technically that 1.0 storyline. So he's committed, like, 10 years to that story,
Mhm.
even though he doesn't like it. So, you know, I'll give him that. Just give me Gelmora, you coward. Just give me Gelmora.
You may be getting Gilmora soon.
If he
You're
gives
like-
me
Be-
Gelmora, then I will kiss his knees. His
feel like
knees.
you're the
His
only
knees.
person-
His actual knees. Not his knees, but his knees.
His knees.
His knees.
Knees.
His
Okay.
knees.
Kiss his ring. Yeah, kiss his rings. That'll take more time.
Okay. Yeah, that will take forever. Okay. Okay. History is crucial in every Final Fantasy game. That's the same one, Lukiel. With each new expansion, new themes are introduced and are focused on. How does the team decide on which themes to focus on with each new expansion? Yoshida says the major themes for the expansion would be first conveyed from me as the game's director to the development team. Although it is somewhat difficult to describe my personal decision-making process, it could be summarized as requiring a sense of surprise and fun. This contains a dual meaning in that I assess whether as developers ourselves we would encounter surprises while enjoying the production process, at the same time as considering whether the story of the expansion would be exciting and fun for the players. In the last expansion, Shadowbringers, I had thought that players must have grown tired of being referred to as a warrior of light. I also came up with the idea of reversing the conventional notion of light equating to justice or something holy, and darkness equating to evil or something bad to generate a sense of surprise. The current state of global affairs is incredibly complex, and simple two-dimensional theories of good/bad from ancient times can no longer quantify this world we live in. As such, a large factor that contributed to the selection of these themes is that I thought I could cultivate new values and a sense of realization within myself by changing perspective and carefully considering the other party's arguments in regard to a given event. Half of the time, these things are born from one's intuition and flashes of inspiration. I guessed as much, but it really is hard to explain. Laughs.
Maybe killing people is good.
Don't bring up the fucking tax man.
I was nowhere near that.
So
Pulled out of nothing.
the thing, what I think he's alluding to here is how both our perspective and Emmett Selk's perspective is reasonable. It's just a matter of which side you are on. Neither side is inherently good or bad.
Right.
It's just because we want to protect our existence and the existence of those we care about. We unfortunately are oppositional to the Asians and Emmett Selk.
I also love the idea that Yoshi-P is just like sitting in his office, and they're like, "It's time. We need to figure out what to do. Like the next expansion, we have to consult the Oracle." And Yoshi-P's like, "The theme is sweat."
Oh, got me interested.
Blood.
Continue.
So,
Oh,
and they're like,
much.
sweat and blood. And then they have to figure out how to do that, calculate the cost. Yeah. I was going to say something else, Rollo, and that would really make you buy that game, but I decided not.
You were going to say, weren't you?
No, but that's really good. Sweat and feet. There you go.
Off
This
a
is
mile
a
of their
podcast.
shoes.
Final Fantasy 14. Feet.
Feet walkers.
Feet. Sweaters.
Walkers.
Foot sweat. Final Fantasy 14 foot sweat. Foot sweater. Okay, anyways. What is this? Next question. I wish he did that as a joke. That he just said feet sweat.
I don't think Yoshi-P has the same sense of humor as us.
Make it work. All right. There have been set characters that have been around in Final Fantasy XIV since A Realm Reborn. These characters show up in every expansion as important every expansion as important, and we see them change over time. What process does the team go through to develop these characters without it being too jarring to returning players? Yoshida says, in a similar fashion to the lives of the players, these characters develop and change as a result of experiencing their share of troubles, encounters, and farewells with others throughout the story. The development team very much cherish Final Fantasy XIV's NPCs and express those feelings through the chronological narrative. Accordingly, by picking up where they left off and progressing throughout the main story, even returning players are able to feel the changes to those NPCs. There is no drastic process in particular, and by depicting those changes in the story, both returning characters and current players end up with a comparable understanding towards the characters. There aren't many who would skip a few seasons of a TV drama and start watching from the middle now, are there?
I mean, a drama, no.
No.
A sitcom, yes.
True.
Yeah, you can watch
Imagine if
as season 2 or 3.
Yes.
Imagine if 14 had the humorous sensibilities of a sitcom and the story narrative of a sitcom.
I mean, it would be Hildebrand.
It would be Hildebrand.
They have to get people catchphrases too.
Yeah. Babala baboob.
Yeah, you stole would say that.
Yeah. All right. I just picked like I would love that. Can someone make that? Babala baboob. Okay, next question. Classes, jobs are important in almost all Final Fantasy games. In Final Fantasy XIV, they are crucial as a tool for both new abilities and story. Each class has their own storyline and and it develops with new expansions. How does the team decide on what class to pick from previous Final Fantasy games and write storylines for? Yoshida says, for jobs that form a large part of the player's game experience, we conceive them upon placing greater importance on the game experience rather than the story. This is because any constraints relating to the story would be detrimental to the game experience. As such, even though the Warrior of Light's job changes in the movies for each expansion story, we don't necessarily put the new jobs in the spotlight. For Shadowbringers, I had requested Dark Knight in order to depict the pivotal role as Warrior of Darkness. In contrast, the new Gunbreaker and Dancer jobs for Shadowbringers were decided upon after I discussed with the battle system team, and we opted to incorporate new jobs for balancing battles, which adequately addressed requests from players. So we actually decide the jobs. So we actually decide the job first, and then devise the story so that it fits well within the game's universe. Each of Final Fantasy XIV's elements are not necessarily determined based on a single direction, but instead differ depending on whether we wish to place importance on the story experience or alternately the game experience. Of course, I'm very grateful that the battle team, who have the first say, kindly considered the mood of the expansion and story direction when reviewing the possibilities for new jobs. Are there any jobs, so knowing that this has been his philosophy, are there any jobs that you feel are a bit jarring in 14 that don't really fit in the world? I think we have to ignore the first, just like Hydaelyn job on Hydaelyn.
I mean, I don't think anything particularly stands out.
No,
I think Scholar is a little strange, maybe.
I was thinking Scholar is probably
Scholar.
one of the ones that stands out the most. I think that Sage will stand out a little bit now as well.
Yeah, they got fucking Gundam shit.
Yeah.
Gundam.
Yeah, the Gundam stuff is not like a thing that's they're pushing it into the like the Worldlet story. Like we were getting mechs there, and now Charlian has. We're just guessing that it's from Charlian, but I mean, it is.
I think Gunbreaker pushes kind of.
Yeah, I was thinking Gunbreaker's a little bit strange as well.
Yeah, because
especially considering the lore they gave it, that it's supposed to be an ancient art.
Gunbreaker,
that's weird.
Yeah, because Gunbreaker. So I will again. I'm not defending Tanaka, but when Tanaka decided the jobs, he looked at the world.
Yeah.
and then made the jobs to fit within the world, so they are believable. He gave Yoshi-P Gunbreaker. He gave a unique. They have the Gaius weapon. That is already. Everyone thought that was going to be the Gunbreaker job, and then they decided to go for a Final Fantasy VIII design instead, and then make new lore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I forgot how jarring that actually was. That was very disappointing to me because I was been waiting to like use like Gaius's weapon at some point because it is a pretty cool design.
Yeah, I kind of wish they did lean more into like, oh, you're using the enemy weapon kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like really somewhat advanced mechanical weapon things are a little bit of a weird fit for 14.
Yeah.
Like Machinists just kind of push it,
Mm-hmm.
and then they got a little bit more jarring once you got the fucking multi-tool drill.
Yeah.
Machinist doesn't weird me out as much just because it is explicitly a new job in the world of 14.
Yes.
It does not have a century-old history like Gunbreaker does.
We're part of its. We're making it. So
it's a brand new job crystal. It's the only one that does not mention previous memories from previous owners.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember?
Do you think...
Oh, go ahead.
You go first, Rollo.
Yeah, you go first, Rollo.
I was gonna say, in like reference to like things being the jobs being made less about just fitting in the world or whatever, and more just like the utility of it. Remember doing the story quest, at least for him. Remember doing the Red Mage quest, like the first one, like the first instance, and like the cat boy is just like straight up telling you, balance your your black and white magic.
Oh,
make sure
yes.
It's weird. I don't know why. It's just like, balance this HUD item. Do it. Press the X button too.
Yeah.
What I'm taking away from this is they decided that the Warrior of Light would be a Dark Knight before they decided that Thancred would be a Gunbreaker. I'm curious as to what point in the story development they decided that. Because I wonder what job they had Thancred as originally. It'd be strange to have him as a ninja or rogue doing what he's doing to save Reen.
Yeah. I think they really just needed a tank too before the thing, so I can see that kind of being an early decision.
Yeah. They needed someone to wield that cool gunblade from Final Fantasy VIII.
Oh, makes you want to play Gunbreaker. He has one.
Yeah.
You don't think they could have made Urianger a Gunbreaker?
No. No.
Before an Astrologian. Wait, wasn't he?
He was
an Arcanist.
He was an Arcanist.
Okay, that's what it was.
Which was weird because it meant we had two Arcanists.
He also had the 1.0 proto Arcanist staff in A Realm Reborn.
That's right. He had like the meter thing or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Right, let's move on. World building is one of the best parts of the Final Fantasy XIV experience. It is filled with many cultures, races, ways of speaking, cities, history, and so much more. How are these new areas created from scratch, and what steps does the team go through to make sure the story and lore is structurally sound? Yoshida says story and lore are not two separate entities. I believe in most cases they refer to the same thing. Some may consider the lore to be merely the basis of the world setting in itself, but it is actually determined as we develop the history or story of each element in 14. It's just that this hasn't been explained in detail publicly. Therefore, we're not just deciding the lore on a whim, but we have a proper story and history behind it. We actually often refer to texts when the sacred texts. When devising the lore, and these typically revolve around the origins of real historical events, customs, ethnicities, dialects, and cities. As a result, we ensure consistency by developing the lore while simultaneously crafting the story. It goes without saying, but the story writers and lore creators are constantly exchanging information, and at times both roles are carried out by the same person. You can also consider the structural soundness as something ensured through their earnest efforts. Well,
not do a good job with the Far East. I'm sorry. You guys did not do any of this with the Far East, it feels like.
Well, I will say, Rollo, they did a better job at the Far East than fucking Gurabanya now, didn't they? They're... you can never, Rollo, you can never bring up the East and say that that was done poorly when it was the main focus of an expansion that was supposed to be about Al Amigo. Make my blood boil, Rollo, with bringing up Authard. Don't ever bring up Authard in my presence.
Listen, they just when it comes to Doma in everything in Authard or whatever in general, except for the steppe, it's all just vaguely East Asian. They didn't.
There's lore.
The lore book actually does go into the difference between Doma and Hingan culture quite a bit.
They do, but they definitely do not do a good job at showing it in game.
Well, apparently, they use the same alphabet.
Yeah. Authard. It's an expansion area, and like he said it himself. So what he's the lore, there is to him there is no distinction between lore and story, right? So they write the story, and that is the lore. They don't sit down and create additional lore. It sounds like if it's not needed for a story, then the lore will not be added, right? That's what I'm getting from his answer.
They do decide on the lore, but it's normally in respect to the story.
Yeah.
Because, like, as we were talking about in the second lore book, they go into quite a bit of detail about the differences, the different architectural styles between Hingashi and Doma.
Yes.
But that's not really covered in game.
No. Yes, but there is a lot of lore though, Rollo. There are so many side quests in Authard that explain, and I have done 2% of them.
You're an Authard fan, I see, huh?
I am not an Authard fan. It's so sad because I would probably enjoy Authard, but the fact that it stole like the expansion from Al Amigo has just soured it forever for me. I can never forgive it for its existence. I also don't like that none of the calamities that has befallen that we always thought was like planet wide had literally no effect on Authard. They're like, oh, there's a slight rumble. Oh, there goes another era over in the west. It's odd. And also considering if you read it makes less sense if you read the lore book, because if you read like about the aftermath of each calamity, like they are literally almost back to the Stone Age. Like after a calamity, they huddle together in tiny little like enclaves trying to like survive. Meanwhile, they're like smoking their long ass pipes and having a great old time over in the east,
having fun.
Yeah. It's very odd.
I just think the most heinous one is definitely just Dalamud. Like,
yes,
the other one, I could buy like, okay, the Great Flood, that definitely hit some island people over there or something. I don't know. Flood some areas, made some rice patties. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like the moon, a moon down, is.
Imagine having like your moon always having like a smaller moon like orbiting it, and then that small moon just detaching, coming down on the planet, and you're in the Far East and you're just watching it happen, and nothing. It affects nothing. Well, actually, we know that it did something. I believe there's a isn't there like a mention of the seventh umbral or the seventh umbral calamity?
But I don't have as much of a problem with the Dalamud thing not affecting Authard, because it can only hit one side of the planet.
Yes.
When something impacts a planet, it's not like it hits one side and then the shards orbit around the other side just to hit Authard.
No, but there's like shit gets thrown into the atmosphere. Imagine the size of. Do you see the size of Bahamut?
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Don't.
It didn't
You
actually
cannot defend this part.
It did. Yes, I can. It did not
Oh my
actually
God.
impact the planet. It was destroyed before it hit.
Yeah, well, okay, but it was thrown to all of the pieces, the entire mass of that moon hit the planet.
So like
He blew it up and threw it down.
When it was coming down and getting closer, was it like tidally locked to that location over Eorsia?
So in 1.0 lore, animals went crazy, crops failed all over Eorsia. Like there was a famine. There was animals attacking, like even pets and chocobos like attacked their owners because they got like, we had like a harvest fest. What was it called? I don't remember what it was called. It was like this when you got the earrings. Like Eorsia was getting fucked just by the presence of Dalamud. Meanwhile, smoke in the long pipe in the east, it's odd.
They never saw it. It was never above them. Like I said, it stayed stationary right above them.
No, that's not how it works. I definitely think they would have seen the moon at some point.
Yeah.
I just don't think it landed there.
Yeah. The fact that they were completely unaffected by Dalamud cannot be defended. There would have been atmospheric changes. There would have been a lot. And
where were the tsunamis, huh?
Although we don't know much about the 5 years after Dalamud's impact, we know it was very, very rough. Like, society was like crumbling. It was like entire cities were wiped out. The fact that...
But isn't it also the case that your hero, Louis Soir, did all that he could to localize it so that it didn't have the same degree of an impact as a regular calamity?
There's a reason why all the city-states still stand. Well, they didn't want to redesign this city-states. That's why. But if he hadn't done what he had done, Dalamud would have destroyed the planet, which, I mean, it would have been the end, according to him. Like, there wouldn't have been a reset. It would have been just, fuck off, you're all dead. That's at least what I feel like he said in the Coils story.
Did he say that it was going to be completely destroyed? I feel like that would have been not what the Ascians wanted.
I don't remember. Well, he thought it would be the worst calamity we had ever had.
Isn't that just because this could just be something that Louis Soir theorized?
Yes,
because
he was a
I would be shocked if the Ascians wanted the source.
Okay, now we
need to be destroyed.
We need to. There is. Remember, lore has changed a lot. The Ascian plot was not the same then as it is now. That's what I mean. That's the problem. Is that they changed the story, so when we discuss story, it doesn't line up anymore. That's why that's my problem with Othard, is that it doesn't line up with the lore from before. I'm a poet.
I agree with you there.
Well, actually, they did feel earthquakes, didn't they? I think, right?
They did.
They did.
Yeah.
Yes. That is what they mentioned. Is the earthquake, I think.
Mm-hmm. They felt the tremors throughout the planet. I don't think it's ever mentioned them that their animals went crazy, which is something that should have occurred.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Othard.
But maybe they just never talked about it. Maybe it wasn't that important to bring up 5 years later.
It's also weird, though, that they're like, oh, yeah, the West decimated. All trade has dried up because there's no ships left. Like, remember, wasn't Limsa, like, hit by a tidal wave, like, shortly after? That's how the Sahagin came. Like, it must have crushed all of their ships.
Lenosha was.
Lenosha. Well, it must have impacted Limsa.
Well, the city... I don't think it hit the city-state because it looks very much the same.
Well, yeah, but there's like giant... No, there was like a big like dock on the right. If you... Okay, imagine...
Right. There was a big dock.
Yeah.
It's very weird that it localized to hit that side and then the rest of it seems pretty much unaffected.
There are big chunks that are missing, but they were pointless in 1.0. That's why they removed them, obviously. But yeah, you could argue.
We really get the nitty-gritty here on speakers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean... It points out what he's saying, is that they sometimes just decide on something in the story and now it's lore. That's how it is in this game. Side quests. Okay, moving on. We need to move on. God, we're still in the first interview. Fuck. Side quests are vital in an MMO. They must not only exist, but be full of interesting tales and characters. There have been many side quests in the past that have had me fully invested. What process does the team go through when creating new and original side quests? Oh god, sorry. Don't read chat. Thank you. Despite being categorized as side quests, we take the lore into account in much the same fashion as the main scenario, while also transforming various tales behind the lore into quests. Thanks to this, we're able to do a thorough job of developing the story. The content that we can definitely depict, though, is inevitably minimized due to the extremely limited steps for completion of the side quest goal, which is designed as such to avoid a sense of redundancy. It is due to this situation that the side quest writers and staff in charge of quest implementation will rely on their ingenuity, such as delivering a single story to the player through several quests. That could be done, for example, by creating an ongoing quest series or throwing related quests here and there into the mix. And it's this type of ingenuity that also contributes to ensuring an engaging experience for the player.
Love the Catboys, my favorite side quest chain.
Which one?
The one in what was it? The Fringes. You're throwing the bomb at the Catboy.
Oh, yes.
Strong.
And you keep doing that throughout the Base Tribe quest line as well.
Yep.
He loves it. Cats love being thrown bombs.
I think he doesn't love it.
I
think if you speak to him between throwing bombs, he will say, "Please stop," because he thought that he took out most of the gunpowder.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's we have a lot of side quests. That's the thing.
There's a lot of interesting lore you miss out on if you don't do them.
Like,
I want more quest for the side quest for the sub races for the player.
Yes.
I think that would be neat.
Okay. Moving on to the second interview. This one was translated by Kamadani, I believe.
Yes.
Do we have a link to the translation at all, or is it just the...
What?
Do we have a link to the translation at all, or is it just the Japanese one?
But
we used to have
where it is right
preliminary notes at some point. Dead air. Okay, two concepts for yeah, all right. Two concepts for healers okay. Section 1, two concepts for healers and a new melee DPS. So this is about this is after the showcase where they revealed Endwalker. Sage was just announced as the new healer job in Final Fantasy XIV. Additionally, you announced that healers will be split into two concepts: pure healers, white mages and astrologians, and shield healers, scholars and sages. This is where we have our first questions for you. How are you planning on distinguishing pure healers and shield healers moving forward? Yoshi-P says, from a balance standpoint, no matter if you play a pure healer or shield healer, we are making it so there won't be a massive difference in power. Instead, the idea is we want players to have vastly different experiences in gameplay. For example, in the case of Scholar and Sage, the way in which they apply shields will be different. The Scholar playstyle is being able to attack, put up shields, and heal with the help of their fairy. In the case of the Sage, their weapon, the Nulith, isn't a pet, so the Sage's playstyle is going to be different. Our concept is that we want the Warriors of Light to experience that difference. So, since there are going to be shield healers and pure healers, you're going to be splitting healers into two roles? Well, okay, before we go into that question, how do you think Sage will play like then? Because he says that for Sage, it's like, for Scholar, you put up a shield, you attack, you put up shields, and then the fairy will help with healing. And he says that Sage's weapon, the Nulith, is not a pet, so this playstyle is going to be different? Good.
I didn't think it was going to be, but I'm glad with the confirmation. It's not a fucking pet job at all. I don't want to place down the pylons or the funnels or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. hate pets.
I don't know. It's
gonna be hard. I think it's gonna be very hard unless these are big healer changes, because I still think healers right now are in a bad place because they're very. I'm not saying samey, but they're very basic in what they do. I feel like when it comes to healing, it's not.
Yes.
I feel like it's
This
hard to see
expansion-
variety in them.
Yeah.
This expansion in particular really brought them closer to one another. And that's why I hope that with Endwalker, they're going to do what they can to differentiate them again.
Yeah.
The hope, for me at least, is that like shield healers or Barry, whatever, they're going to be more damage-oriented healers, sort of. Because they did talk a little bit about Sage. It's like, oh, you can empower your own attacks or something. It's like, oh, okay, so maybe the idea is that you put up the shield and it's enough for you to keep doing damage for a bit, or I don't know, it plays together.
Mm-hmm.
But and maybe pure healers use support abilities that buff others. I don't know. Something.
Yeah. I don't. This is going to be interesting. I'm looking. I'm worried about what they're doing to White Mage, though. I'm always worried. But all right. So since they're going to be shield healers and pure healers, you're going to be splitting healers into 2 roles. Why did they ask this question? This question, I feel like he's already answered during the showcase. Yoshi-P says, no, there's still going to be just 1 role for healers. So, of course, no matter what healer you play, you can clear content. On the other hand, for difficult content, we feel it is good to have healers be separable.
That's what should be, I think.
If it gets confusing to not have a more clear distinction between pure and shield healers, we can revisit it. Okay. On the same topic, will there be any kind of change to fight balance by making pure healers and shield healers? Yoshi-P says, up until patch 5.3, we heard from a lot of players that healers had a fair amount of downtime on their hands. So from patch 5.4, we've planned for the more difficult content to put out a lot more damage more often. For speed clears, we are planning for it to be harder to do with just pure healers or just shield healers. We plan on continuing to make content with this idea in mind, so content will be easier to clear if you bring 1 pure healer and 1 shield healer. Also, as I said at the announcement showcase, we are going to be changing the algorithm behind the matching systems like Raid Finder as best we can, so it will put both healer types in a group. Well, there you go.
I hope they end up... Sorry, I hope they end up moving away from the pure healing approach that we're getting in Shadowbringers, because everyone knows damage is king. If you want to do things fast, you do more damage. You don't heal more. You know.
Yeah. Pure. Again, I feel like I've talked about this too much. Like healers, I've lamented the state of, like, because I like the damage I have, but it's
just not very variable.
No, it's boring. Okay, so for example, will the limit gauge build up differently if you have double pure healers? Yoshi-P says, if we change specifics of how the limit gauge builds, it will have effects on other encounters where limit gauge building is a part of the fight, so we have no plans for this kind of change.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Dengeki says, with the idea of healers having more specialized roles, are there plans to do something similar to tanks having main tanks and off tanks? Right now, we don't have any plans to make healer subcategories. While, for example, there is a sentiment that paladins are more suited for off-tanking, the truth is they can fulfill both roles, so we want to do something like this with healers. So, Yeah, right. So they want to go for they're not doing anything, in other words.
Yeah.
So it's up to the players to determine that. The 4 tanks are distinct from one another, is Dengeki's reply. That's right. While fulfilling the same role, each job has a different play experience. In the case of DPS jobs, they feel different based on their difficulty to control and different attack abilities. Dengeki then asks, speaking of the new jobs, you said the other new job in addition to SoH will be a melee DPS. There are already 4 melee DPS in the game now. Compared to other job types, melee DPS is the most.
Will be the most.
Please tell us how you came to adding another melee DPS to the game, and how will it be balanced with the existing melee DPS? Yoshida says, when it comes to the amount of job types, say for example in patch 7.0, we add another tank, that would bring us up to 5 tanks. Increases in job types is something unavoidable as the game continues. Furthermore, compared to other roles, a lot of people want to play DPS. Our thinking is adding a new DPS job is a must for an expansion disc. So we went with melee DPS this time. At the current moment, Dragoon is the only job that uses maiming gear, so the new melee job will use it as well.
I hope they fit the look of maiming gear.
Oh, they won't.
No.
I can tell you that based on what dancers look like in a lot of their outfits.
Yeah.
All machinists and art and bards now as well.
Yeah.
Even new gear doesn't perfectly match dancer.
No.
It's very hard to make something that is designed to fit both a dancer and a gunslinger.
Yeah. Okay. On the topic of melee DPS, recent difficult content seems to be going in a direction that makes things more difficult for melee DPS. What are your thoughts about this? Yoshi-P says, we are aware of this on the development side. This is a dilemma shared by many long-running MMOs. If you add a lot of mechanics to an encounter, that encounter becomes more difficult for classes that require movement and positionals. We are currently looking at each job's skills and making adjustments accordingly. And we are, of course, making sure to balance it so ranged DPS won't always have the easier time.
I think one day is positionals.
I was going to say the same thing. How important are positionals that they need to still be kept in their game?
Right.
I like this, but I feel like with a lot of the counter sides are going, like especially all the Boston stuff has no positionals. Nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'd like them to stay in, but I think it makes it more interesting to dance around the boss. It feels like they have one out the door already with them.
Yeah.
The idea of dancing around the boss is already accounted for in fights by the fact that you have to move to avoid AoEs and stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Is that not enough moving around as a melee DPS?
The challenge of also moving around more to do most damage. And you have a lot of you have was it 3 charges of True North too?
I think it's only 2, isn't it?
2.
Yeah, and it's a long uptime too. So you
Yeah.
can already stuff.
Yeah. That's true.
But range have perpetual uptime.
Yeah. True. Okay. Continuing our discussion of battle content, you said that you will be removing belts from the game. Will you be adding the stats lost from belts to other gear to compensate? Just as a side note, because after the announcement of removing belts, the first ever Remnants of a Realm episode has suddenly got an uptick in traffic because people are searching for Final Fantasy XIV belts, and they get my video. So everyone's just commenting "rip belts" in the, in the comments. All right, belts and accessories tend to have lower stats on them, so removing belts won't have a very large effect. Still, we are working on moving stats so you won't feel any change to your game experience. You don't need to worry about it. You may, however, feel like something is a bit different after the number crunch we're going to do. Numbers crunch. Speaking of belts, after what I said at the showcase about materia affixed to belts, I got a message from the development team saying that they are going to take care of the materia too. So from patch 6.0, you can go to a Calamity Salvager and collect any recoverable materia that was in your belts. Players won't have to do any preparation in advance. So there you go.
Very precious last expansion materia. Well, it might matter if you're a crafter or gatherer, maybe. But
The last expansion material is still good for leveling, which you will be doing at the start of Endwalker.
Right.
I'm too late to do that. I'm not going to put material on leveling. I'm sorry.
It's so easy now, Rollo.
Yeah.
But
They have materia melders, and if you have your crafters capped at the end of Shadowbringing, so you can just do it yourself.
change gear too often. I don't want to.
You really don't need to be changing gear that often. If you have the end game gear for Shadowbringers, you probably don't need to change gear into Endwalker until level 85.
I guess that is true.
Okay, so after belts become no longer equipable, will we still be able to turn them in for seals or desynthesize them? That will be unchanged. The only change there will be is we will add a description like once thought to protect adventurers' wastes to the item description. Laughs.
Once thought.
Belts used to keep your pants up. Not anymore.
Okay, so section 2, Endwalker's main color is platinum. Next, we'd like to talk to you about the logo for the new expansion. All previous expansions' logos have been pretty clear in what they were trying to convey. This time, however, the logo feels more mysterious, with elements like that thing that looks like a monolith on the left side of the logo. Please tell us about the concept for this logo and the ideas that went into it. Yoshi-P says, I can't go into too many specifics on the logo, so instead let me speak about the concept Mr. Amano made for us based on our conversations I had with him. I spoke with him about everything we had done throughout the course of this Hydaelyn and Zodiark story, and the theme of finding hope in despair. I first spoke with him in the real-world meta sense of launching a Realm Reborn out of the despair of 1.0's release. I also spoke with him in the game main scenario story sense of finding hope in the despair of the end times and what is to come. I think the nuance came through in this logo. So he didn't really talk about the logo. He talked about the artwork.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So you were saying the meaning of the logo will become more clear after having played the game. Yoshi-P says, I think you will have moments of thinking, oh, so that's what that means after having played. The only other thing I can say at this point is about the planet in the background. Is it the moon? Is it the planet Hydaelyn? Yoshi-P. Spare me. You will find some of these answers as you play the story for 5.5. Yeah, that's Hydaelyn.
Imagine if it is.
Oh my god. What if we learn that the moon is Hydaelyn and we've been on Zodiark all along?
Oh my god. He flipped.
Yeah, oh my god, that would actually be good. I would not hate that twist. All right.
Definitely the most like weird Amano logo.
Yeah.
Especially because you get original 14. It's like okay, the wheel, weapon wheel, that makes sense. Get the dragon for Heavensward. It's dragon, makes sense.
Yeah.
Flag for Liberty or something like that for Stormblood, makes sense. What was
Shadowbringers is just a Dark Knight holding a sword.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is just like I don't know, the fucking pizza flying to the planet. Oh.
Well, it is a callback because it does portray Hydaelyn in the style that she has been portrayed as in the A Realm Reborn and 1.0 artwork. So wait, no, not the 1.0. The 1.0 artwork has this weird. We thought it was Omega at some point because they look similar. The male form.
I was talking about the wrong thing. I was talking about the actual logos for the
You were
expansion.
talking about the
Yeah,
logos.
you were talking about the logos.
Oh, so
talking about the Amano
Yoshi-P
artwork.
tricked you because he's not talking about the logo. He's talking about the Amano art.
Okay.
Well, but then at the end he tries to bring it all back by saying that the nuance came through in this logo.
Yes. Right. The title screens of each expansion until now has had one main color as its theme. What is the color for this expansion? Yoshi-P says, the color as I explained to the development team is platinum. The difference is a very small nuance, but the color is not white. I told them the concept of the red moon and explained that the theme color was neither the darkness or of night nor the white of the morning. The white of the morning. I don't think I've ever heard that before, but all right. I told them the color is the golden color that illuminates someone's face in that brief moment when the light first hits them.
I get it.
So artistic.
It's very specific.
I could see on the faces of the development team that I was asking them to do the impossible again. Nevertheless, the logo is neither gold nor yellow. It sits on the fine line between both. It represents the final glimmer of light between the new dawn of a realm reborn and the darkness of night of Shadowbringers. Shadowbringers opened in a world without night. For this expansion, we want to make something similar to surprise players. We're using the Platinum theme as the base for the color adjustments for this expansion. So if you remember all of this, you may be surprised when you see it in the story.
Everything's going to be chrome. Like that SpongeBob episode.
Well, okay. Well, I think also Platinum, like the moon is kind of platinum colored. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I hope
I would have gone.
this maybe.
I think I would have gone more with silver. Platinum's a very pretentious color.
It is. I mean, we just read how he described it as well. Very pretentious. In the teaser trailer, the Warrior of Light is now a paladin as his main job. Why is that? Yoshi-P says, to tell the truth, I agonized over what to make his main job. As everyone already knows, I am a contrarian, and I like to turn the story upside down and look at things from that different perspective to surprise the players. In Shadowbringers, for example, we started development with me coming up with the initial concept that players were probably getting sick of being called Warriors of Light. Okay, so he said this before. This time, when we decided to write the final chapter of the Hydaelyn and Zodiark story, as is the case in all classic Final Fantasy games, I thought about the idea of hope. I thought about the desire I and many people have to carry hope as well as the desire to abandon hope. When I thought about who would be standing on the front line and shouldering all of that, I thought of a paladin. With that image rolling around in my head, I made the decision. Endwalker is going to be a title similar in scale to and on par with the ending story of any title in the Final Fantasy series. That's
Board and board time. Where do we go next from here, though?
They're running out of melee classes.
Yeah.
They got Ninja and Gunbreaker, and I guess whatever we get in this expansion as well.
Ninja expansion. We're gonna go back to author.
Next expansion we'll get the Dancer of Light.
Yeah, but remember, he likes to not do what you think. So maybe one day we'll actually get a white mage.
They better make a.
I would like it.
Yeah.
They're gonna put the main character in the white maid's dress.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hell yeah.
To be honest, if I was to pick a class that is cool enough to be the main image of an expansion, I think that I could see Machinist coming next.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Next expansion may not even be Derplander. Maybe they decide to cut him loose. Because he's like the 1.0. He is the 1.0 guy.
They're a different one, like Highlander Midlander they used to use all the time. And
it's actually the same character, Rollo.
It's the same character, Rollo.
It was like a redhead or something. I mean, like in patch screenshots for 2.x.
Oh, but that was just to represent the player character. I don't think that's canon. That's just because they needed someone to be the main character in a screenshot.
It looked vaguely like him, but just a redhead.
Yeah. I don't think that is canon. I'm just thinking about the cutscene. No, sorry, the opening cinematic. Right. We need to skip some, I think. The swimming thing we've talked about that already. Okay, continuing. I'll talk about what to look forward to on the moon. Continuing with that idea, what kind of experiences can we look forward to on the moon? Yoshi-P says, for starters, there are questions like, what is the moon? What is going on the other side and beneath the surface? To be honest, I've been into astronomy for the past year or so, and I saw 2 theories on the formation of Earth's moon. So in response to some of these open-ended questions, this expansion will be about writing a story about the moon specific to our world. The moon in our story is a combination of concepts from the development team, the moon in the real world, and some things we made up. I hope you pay attention to it. Oh yeah, to any concerned warriors of light that may be out there worrying if there's an atmosphere on the moon, please relax. That is explained in the story as well, so please look forward to it. There
Excellent.
you go. Thank you.
Don't matter.
They're just gonna be like, oh fuck, I can breathe. Of course you can breathe. Oh, okay.
Don't worry.
What did you say, Rollo?
I said, why wouldn't you be able to breathe another planet, stupid?
Right. Exactly.
We'll be blessed by the space
Kojin.
Yeah.
Kojin, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the music is a part of the experience that can't be forgotten, and it seems like Soken pulled out all the stops for the theme this time. What did you ask of him when making the soundtrack to this game? Yoshi-P says, I asked him to consider that even though this is the climax of the story, every single song cannot be a moving epic masterpiece. I asked him to make songs to match what was going on in the story at the time. To both Soken and myself, the main theme of Shadowbringers was quite invocative. The theme of the Crystal Tower is woven into it. Woven into it to give it too many it's woven into it to give it that Final Fantasy feeling. But even if you take it out, it can stand as an unconventional Final Fantasy title by itself. Many of our players really liked that song, so it gave us a lot of confidence. Taking a step forward from this point, I told him to make something that expresses the grand finale to the first adventure of our 14th Final Fantasy. Soken kept telling me what a busy schedule he has, but he's been working really hard, and I hope everyone looks forward to the music in this game. There you go. I think we are going to have to jump...
Very excited about this new, the new theme.
Yes. There's one last thing, the last question of this interview, which is about the PC, the PS5 and the PC version. With the new expansion, there's going to be a graphical upgrade to the game. Is there also going to be a change in the minimum PC requirements?
Ooh.
Yoshi-P says, no, we're working hard on the PS5 version to make it look as good as possible, but since this is going to be the final chapter in the Hydaelyn and Zodiac storyline, we decided not to make any major changes. I want to upgrade the graphics engine at some point, since the amount of data used has gotten quite great over these 10 years. Also, we want to rebuild the data access system to support 4K graphical textures. Players have also told us they want their mounts to feel more alive, but for that to work, we will need to do a graphical overhaul. It's coming! Oh. We are, of course, doing this little by little. Please remember that we work on schedule planned years at a time. We were able to fix some of our data center issues on this schedule over a long period of time, fitting in work where we could. So when it comes to updated graphics, it is something we want to do, but don't have much free time. It is quite a challenge to do as well, so please be patient. So 7.0 graphical overhaul, maybe?
Maybe.
Just for mounts, actually, though.
Yeah, just mounts. 4K mounts.
You're gonna see the behemoth muscles, like, full detail.
Yeah. It also looks like we might get some smaller graphical updates before then, but yeah, it's...
Just texture, please.
Yeah, the textures are... we need the textures.
They've lost those textures. They have to make them from scratch.
What kind of pipeline is this where you lose textures?
Square Enix. All right, we need to do one last interview. We are... Okay.
Okay,
so, yeah.
I was going to say we should probably move on.
Well, this is the most important... This is the Washington Post interview, and we have to read it because it's still relatively relevant.
I got to read about it.
Is it? Oh god, but it's so long.
It is very long.
Okay. Well, fuck it. We knew this was going to happen. All right. Final Fantasy XIV director discusses the challenges of building an always online game. This is from Washington Post. Final Fantasy XIV holds a unique place in modern gaming history. Once considered a catastrophic failure, a second shot 3 years later at making the game making the game turned fortunes around. Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn is now considered the ultimate success story of how an always online multiplayer game can recalibrate after high-profile failure. Like a Snyder's Cut for fantasy role-playing games, except with a proven track record of 20 million monthly players. Excuse me. If that is true, that would be massive news if we had 20 million monthly players. I don't think I have a hard time believing that, but
I wish you did say Snyder Cut. That's very embarrassing.
yeah. So let's say 1 million monthly players, and one of the that is a stretch at this point because we're far into the patch. And one of the longest shelf lives of any online video game. They don't play many games, do they? The person who wrote this, the longest shelf lives of any online video game. One of the. I don't even know if it can claim that. We have like games like fucking RuneScape, which has been online for like as long as the internet has been around.
I feel as if there's like a different tier to that though. I feel like they're talking about like World of Warcraft 14 tier MMOs. EverQuest I would include in that. Yeah. Not at this point, but back then.
11. It's like almost 20 years old. I mean, there's a lot of online games that are old, but yeah, older than 14.
Prestigious?
It's
been going for a while.
I think I agree that it's just weird. I think I got put. They said Snyder's Cut. They gave the wrong monthly player number. I'm skeptical. Okay, moving on. Much of that success is attributed to Naoki Yoshida, or Yoshi-P, as he's affectionately known. Yoshida took over the rehabilitation process as producer and director, armed with some knowledge of how to build a massive multiplayer online RPG, after his stint as chief planner for Dragon Quest X. A Realm Reborn, released in 2013, and almost 8 years later, it remains one of the healthiest online gaming communities in the world. For some, it's a game even more beloved than World of Warcraft. The game just announced its latest upcoming expansion, Endwalker. In a video call interview with the Washington Post, Yoshida said, "Final Fantasy XIV may never end as long as people keep returning. At its current audience growth rate, Yoshida said Square Enix see at least another 5 years for the online world." This is the big part, is that they have they've added 5 years to its lifetime now. Because remember, we're almost at the end of the first projected lifetime that they gave us, which was 10 years, I believe. So another 5 years. Even now, our CEO is encouraging us to strive for more players and for 30 million. See, that's okay. So it's Yoshi-P that's misled them here. He's said 30 million adventures. So he's probably said we have 20 million adventurers. And then the journalist thought, oh wow, 20 million subs.
Yeah.
Okay, so even now, our CEO is encouraging us to strive for more players and for 30 million adventurers, and he still has future plans for us, Yoshida said through a translator. Probably maybe Koji Fox. Luckily, we don't see any stopping in our momentum. At one point, we thought maybe we might plateau, but fortunately, our player base just continues to expand and grow. This means expansions beyond 2021 and Endwalker, but at least for the near future, it won't mean new platforms. Despite the game's success, Yoshida says a lot of his team's time is spent on creating the expansions and leaves little room for expanding to the Xbox or others, as much as they'd love to see the game beyond the PlayStation and PC ports. Don't do it. Don't do it. We provide content on a fairly regular basis, and our cycle is rather condensed, Yoshida said. And it is a fairly stable cadence that we continue to follow. We have to think about long-term planning with additional platforms. We need additional testing for that particular platform, so it kind of exponentially grows the amount of resources that needs to be allocated. This stable cadence is a big factor of the game's ongoing success, and why its community has generally been pretty happy. Unlike so many other live service, always online multiplayer games. Yoshida says that when planning expansions, about 70% of the work is already expected to be done, and the team leaves 30% of its energy to devote to different or innovative feature sets. This has been the approach to each story expansion, like Heavensward from 2015 through Endwalker this fall. For example, we'll look at an instance dungeon, and it's within that circle of 60 to 70%, Yoshida said. For creating our instance dungeon, we would need our game design to come up with the actual content of the plan, and that would probably take about 10 business days. And then we would report that for the proper approvals, which cost another 30 days. And then we'll route that to the programmers, which would take them about 2 weeks to program in the it would take them 2 weeks to program in the mechanics. It's very clear as to how much cost and time will take with each component of the package that we have for our planners and the management. This standardized approach has helped the team become more efficient in creating dungeons, but because the game is a live service, he's wary about the team resting too much on their laurels when it comes to creative stories and features. That's why the approach leaves about 30% of the team's time to focus on innovation. It's great that his teams can anticipate the work, but it's less exciting if the player base is able to predict the upcoming updates. With that being said, there's a major risk of boredom and fatigue, Yoshida said. In order to mitigate that aspect, that's why we leave 30 to 40% outside of the bundled package so we can take on new challenges, think of new pieces of content we can deliver, and sometimes we'll make use of that space over multiple patches to bring something larger scale. So by doing so, we still have a sort of stability in our 60 to or 70% regular content. The post asked Yoshida if he had any advice for developers of AAA live service games. In a period that started with Bungie's Destiny in 2014, 1 year after A Realm Reborn, more large publishers and developers started to create massive always online games, but these games have almost always launched with equally massive problems. Yoshida is not commenting here on any specific title or genre, and he took great pains to underscore that every studio will have different needs and different plans for its games. It's especially difficult to create these games, he said, when a studio is backed by multiple investors, all expecting a steady revenue source. It's really crucial to understand how monetization is going to interweave with the actual gameplay, Yoshida said. Looking at some recent examples, it does seem like the studios kind of throw on monetization elements and scramble to do so when the game is out there. It seems to be quite a challenge for those who come from console games. Is it? Okay. Yoshida was famous for coming into the A Realm Reborn project completely unknown to the team who had worked on it, but armed with timetables and project goals to follow. He stressed that realistic goals and strict schedules must be outlined far in advance. Ideally, we want at least 2 years' worth of plans already made when you're starting out. What kind of content we want to incorporate and where we want to take the game, he said. Structure your system so that it will accommodate for those updates and have your base foundation designed on those plans in mind, and having those updates considered as part of the plan. We already know this, like that they plan very far ahead.
I mean,
Yes.
you have to for games.
Yes.
Yeah, they said that. I think in another interview, maybe one we'll talk about another week.
Yeah.
Or one we've already talked about. They blend together. They mentioned that Endwalker's story was, I think, done before Shadowbringers was released.
Yes. Well, at least almost.
Or
they were
outlined.
Yeah, they outlined it, yeah.
And then when they locked in the hotel room and start writing.
Yeah. Yes. All right.
Do that. SoH videos. Just lock yourself in a hotel.
Yeah. All right. Having a set amount of work enabled his team to create tools to make the work even easier. The ideal situation is that you're not worrying about any of this stuff around launch period, which leads to chaos. Final Fantasy XIV has also been lauded as one of the better written entries in the series, a notable accolade for being one of only 2 of the franchise's massive online games. Yoshida confirms that he and 4 story writers conceived the premise first, usually locking themselves in a rental meeting room somewhere in the Shinjuku ward of Tokyo. The stories are usually planned out far in advance. For Endwalker, the story was written by October 2019.
There you go.
There you go.
It was in this interview.
Yeah. For the Stormblood expansion in 2017, Yoshida said he directed the team to write a story around the character Omega, a recurring super boss. Once they sketched up the rough concept of a plot, the writers would send the ideas to the battle team to start planning game mechanics around the planned fights and dungeons. Yoshida said he wasn't as satisfied with how combat scenarios and stories didn't gel until the team got more experience through Stormblood. It's the same team that worked on the 2 other contents, but you could see there's such an improvement in what they were able to bring to the table, Yoshida said. Even though Final Fantasy XIV may not be ending soon, Yoshida has now begun to shift his attention as producer for Final Fantasy XVI, the next single-player chapter in the series. It's thought of as a reward for steering the online ship so well, and this will be his first stint in directing a mainline single-player adventure. Ooh.
It's thought of as a reward. I mean, that's probably true.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he did always wanting to make a mainline Final Fantasy game.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting that they would phrase it that way.
That it's a reward?
It feels...
I mean,
can't think of the word.
We don't say it, but the online Final Fantasies are not viewed in the same light as the main as a single player game. So it's a bit more, it's an honor to be like the director. Producer, sorry, for a mainline single player Final Fantasy game. So I guess it is.
The word I was thinking of, it feels like an editorialization to say it
right.
that way.
Okay. Yeah. I can see. Yeah. That's probably what. Yeah. Right. Yes. Asked if he could indicate any kind of hint as to what the game might entail outside of the trailer that debuted in September, Yoshida chuckled and said he won't be saying anything. But he did elaborate on why he's keeping his mouth shut until he and his team have more to show. We don't want to say something that's half-baked or cause speculation on the title, Yoshida said. With any Final Fantasy fan, depending on which Final Fantasy title is your jam, the point that you get excited will tend to differ.
I don't think he said that. I don't think that's how I would have translated whatever he actually said in Japanese.
No.
He said my jam. And very
He's not wrong. For many, the cyberpunk anime aesthetic of Final Fantasy VII for the first PlayStation was their introduction, while older gamers will fondly remember the more magical elements of the older Nintendo titles. Or maybe they prefer the young adult dramas of the later series. What did you say, Gary?
6 is kind of cyberpunky.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's steampunk, isn't it?
Steampunk more, yeah.
Let's see. It's important to note that Final Fantasy isn't an ongoing universe, but a series of disconnected, self-contained stories featuring completely different worlds and characters. From what can be gleaned of the recent trailer, Yoshida's 16 will at least be a bloodier and more medieval affair than we've seen from the series in decades. Each person will probably have their own sort of idea or image of what the next Final Fantasy should be, Yoshida said. Saying something half-baked is definitely very high risk. If something gets spoken about, someone will pick it up on social and it starts to spread around and people will form expectations. So with Final Fantasy XVI, whenever we do reveal more information on it, we hope to show what kind of game it's going to bring. What kind of game it's going to bring and what kind of excitement we can bring.
I also don't think Yoshi-P is the kind of people that talks about the social.
No. Okay, well, it's true. I agree with him, and I respect that he's not, like, building up hype before they have something to show. What did you say,
We'll just start saying stuff.
Right. But now, if you start... Well, if you start saying stuff, that's on you, right? So you had nothing to base it on other than that initial trailer. So yeah, I kind of respect that.
Chat brought this up. This is a very this is an interview very much tailored to a more normie audience.
Yeah, I was going to say
that the people that would be normally listening to a podcast like this.
This is Washington Post, so it's obviously
it is their gaming correspondent though, but it's very mainstream.
It is
game.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that it is getting coverage in a mainstream.
That's true.
Mostly online now. Yeah. Newspaper.
Yeah. Does Washington Post still print, Rollo?
Probably. I think most newspapers do, but
Yeah, same here, really.
I wouldn't know
Even
what
though
to buy.
they still print, but I'm like, who buys it? Like, I see
Like-
them in the store, and I'm like, I kind of just want to buy one just to like have one, just to be that guy, because I
mean-
never see anyone buy physical papers.
Like
I
maybe
get all my news. Go, Runner?
if I went to like a bodega in New York City, I'd see one like next to the candy, maybe.
Yeah,
But
yes.
I wouldn't know where else.
I
to
guess
look for
I guess old people still buy them.
I get all my newspaper wrapped around fish and chips.
Ah, there you go. That's the people
Yeah,
who buy them.
the chips and then you read the news.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, fish and chip stores that combine with news agencies would have a lot of papers that aren't being sold.
True. Okay. Fuck, we
Let's
promised
move on to
MogMail.
one-
So, okay, we have one MogMail that we'll read as well. That is the end of the main story. We have more interviews for next week, so
Expect that for the next month or so, to be
yeah,
honest.
there's a lot of interviews coming now. This is a good time to be a 14 podcast, I guess. But yeah, next week we'll read some more. We promised some MogMail, and MogMail we shall have. One MogMail. Here we go. This one's from Zianir Misa from Odin. Hello, speakers. I'll preface this with a little disclaimer. 14 is my favorite game and one I keep enjoying after all these years, so my MogMail is more about thought-inducing criticism and less about me being fed up with the game, which, fortunately, I'm not. Let's move on to the topic. Ever more often, 14 seems to have this weird pattern that new, good, and interesting content needs to have a very, very lazy side of it. Some more than others, and with varying severity. We had new races, but with limited options. New relics brought Bosnia, but the relic grind itself is more about pre-Shadowbringers content. New Blue Mage spells are very creative, but there's no new Savage rewards nor new carnivals. Regene's boss mechanics feel new and fun, but boss models are all recycled and more. Some are not that bad, but the more I think about it, the more I can see this dichotomy pretty much everywhere. I might even add incredible Shadowbringer story, but then it ends on Xenos climax. But that might just be me. That's true. Am I seeing things, or am I onto something? And if you agree, how do you feel about it? Keep it up. See you around. Thank you, Zianir.
I mean, development teams in general are always looking for any opportunity to save time.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't blame them for a lot of these things. Like, the reuse of models has been happening since the Realm Reborn. I especially don't have a problem with that.
yeah, and I mean, like, it's the same like skeleton rig or whatever, but like
Yeah.
it's a new
The
model.
models, sometimes they are so good that you don't even
Yes,
notice it. So,
Like it
like
took me a while to see that they reused Thornton for that dude from FF5
mhm.
Mega Raids. What's his name? Is it FF5?
Chaos.
No,
oh
no.
no, X-Death. Sorry.
X-Death.
I didn't even realize. Oh, that is Thornton.
A lot of the
and-
models are from other games too. That is a good point. There are sometimes, and then they get reused, so it's like double reuse.
Yeah.
It's MMO.
Omega uses the Toad rig. I see. I would have never thought that.
Oh
But it
yeah,
makes
you're
sense.
right.
I've never noticed that.
Holy
Yeah, but-
shit.
It makes sense. But like a lot of time, you do a really good job of just like this is a new thing, presenting it, similar-ish. But
Yeah. Though we did talk about Viera and Rothgar, which is still an odd situation to be in.
I think the continuation of the limitations is strange.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have a problem with.
Old stuff,
Them being
fine, understand.
yeah,
And I
It's a lot.
feel like I've heard them say that they were gonna like slowly introduce the old gear to the headpiece, to the
They
head.
did say that.
They did, yeah. Never heard that again. So I don't know if they've just completely backed out. Maybe they realized that this was just way too much work.
Maybe they did it at the start and they were like, that's enough.
Yeah.
When they
Sometimes
added all the glasses and some of the hats.
Yeah.
they just give up sometimes on
They
some
do.
like small things. Like this doesn't bother me, but like if you get the calfskin hat or whatever, and you're
Yeah.
on Mikote, you just don't have.
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And that happens sometimes. Like sometimes there's no fucking tail hole in whatever armor you're wearing.
Mhm.
And sometimes there is. But
Yeah.
I think that's more funny, and I'm like, okay, it's just the nature of making games. Sometimes you just gotta say fuck it, shit's gonna clip, shit's gonna get reused, shit's gonna just not be done sometimes.
Mhm. I'm just still every time we talk about like headpieces for Vera, I'm just reminded of that one picture on Twitter where someone's like they'd solved the dream hat, like the Santa hat problem for Vera. Just had one on each ear.
Yeah.
It's so good. I wish that was in the game. Yeah. I see it. I see it more now than I did before. The headpieces, but also with the relic. Now, granted, a lot of that has been fixed a little now
Actually.
with the hotfix. But the fact that it was introduced like that is still worrying. It's like, why did you do that?
Because that's what people were asking for. I don't necessarily blame them for it. I think they just went the wrong direction with it.
Well, yeah, but okay, one thing is sometimes they listen too much, right? Sometimes they lean in a little too far, and sometimes they listen to the loud minority in this game because they're loud, and that's probably what they did here.
I don't think it was the loud minority.
I will quote
when you compare.
No,
what
I'm
the
not going
alternative
against
was in
you.
Stormblood.
I'm quoting Steve Jobs. People don't know what the fuck they want.
That's true.
So don't listen to them. Make your own game.
I mean, I think you need to listen to them a little bit. Otherwise, you get things like 1.0.
Oh, yes, but release the content the way you want it, and then listen. Don't listen and then make the content. Like, they'll be like, I want a dungeon where there's, like, water, and then a little bit of rocks, and then, but the rocks are alive. And then they make this, like, really stupid dungeon. They're like, no, didn't want this.
I mean, very common 14 community requests, though. Like,
yeah,
I want with the water.
More dungeon.
Yeah. Anyways.
I'll just say, game development's fucking hard. If you ever tried it, like, even if you try to make something small, like, I've been like,
even something in like RPG Maker.
Yeah.
God, it's so much work.
Yeah.
It's so much work to make the square move an inch on your.
What an example.
But seriously, it is.
I know.
I agree.
I know. Yeah.
No, I can't. I don't want to call them lazy. I feel like it's not a good word to use like this. I think that's honestly, you do got to cut corners sometimes. Sometimes it has to you got to sacrifice some stuff.
The game's old as well.
Yeah.
You can question their decisions, but I don't know if I would ever call them lazy. You
Yeah.
can question where they decide to allocate their resources.
Yes.
I do think it is a little bit strange that there wasn't a new mount added for Blue Mage for clearing the latest 3 Savages, but maybe their way, because the Morble is for clearing 6. So maybe there will be another mount once they level up Blue Mage to level 80, and there's another 6 you have to do.
Who knows? We'll see.
It's just a theory.
Just a theory. A game theory.
We still have more time for Blue Mage Cotton to come in this expansion, I think, right?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to add another Blue Mage patch Blue Mage next patch. I think we've gotten 2 Blue Mage updates this patch. This expansion, I think that's...
We did get one earlier.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we have had 2 already.
But I do suspect Blue Mage will catch up to the actual level cap with the next expansion.
Yeah, If we get 2 patches, Blue Mage patches, then yeah, we'll have caught up.
Mm-hmm.
About 5 levels this time, actually.
Oh god, that'd be infuriating.
Or they'll make it so that it's always behind, because they will split their limited job development between 2 limited jobs.
Oh, that's true.
That'd be fucked up.
Yeah.
That's fine. I guess if it's fun content, I'd be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
I will say, I think it is very weird. There is only one. Zynia says none, but I think it's very strange that there is only one new Masked Carnival fight for this Blue Mage update.
It's a shame too, because they're pretty fun fights. Like you can get pretty creative and do wacky in them, especially if you know the ins and outs of like Blue Mage skills.
Yeah. I'll let you know this, Liqueur. This fight is the second hardest Blue Mage fight, I think.
The second
hardest. Not as I think it is not as difficult as the one where you fight Pepsi Man and Lava Man.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I think that is still the most difficult fight.
Okay. Right. Well, there you go. I think a lot of this can just be chalked up to the game being old now. Like, it's you can't just keep making, like, you know, massive new... I mean, some of the decisions they made in these patches have been interesting. But they've had... there is a pandemic. I wish I could just say there was a pandemic, but unfortunately there still is. And
1 year anniversary soon.
Really soon.
Yes, that's true. God. Which has maybe made it more visible because they literally have to cut bigger corners than before in these patches. So yeah, that might be why. All right. Thank you. That's it for MogMail for today. That's the main show. Thank you for watching. Remember, the post show will begin shortly after this. We'll be back next week, same time, same place as well. Remember to catch us then. Remember to follow on Twitter at SpeakersXIV, twitch.tv/SpeakersOfIreland, youtube.com/SpeakersXIV, Discord in chat if you want to join our Discord server. If you're watching on demand, links in the description. Send us MogMail, SpeakersXIV.com/MogMail. The website is working. It's slow, but it's working. And if you were watching Speaker's Place, any of those playthroughs, they will resume regular uploads again next week, now that the hard drive has been fixed. It will be fixed by Monday. The temporary fix is currently working as well, so we're good. All right, see you in the post show if you're watching live. Goodbye!
Bye.